You have to almost leave breadcrumbs to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but back in this corner, it can't be good.
I just happened that there was a restaurant that was open, so. How is it going? I mean, are you in for a re-election?
I am.
Are you also?
No,
No.
Mark is coming. Mark Davis.
No, Mark is-
No, nobody vote for me for anything. So.
Mark, Mark is part of my road. RB Sons. I know TJ's name as well.
DJ's running, yeah, that was good. I'm glad he jumped in.
And one of the board members chose not to rerun.
Penny ran full time running. She served for 20 years.
That's right.
And she decided that was long enough.
So 3 seats are up, 2.
So that's all I learned.
How's the car?
8 folks running.
It's a pretty big district.
110,000 registered voters.
Yeah, because PQ, RB, Poway, and where should Chris?
No scripts, but Forest Ranch, they'll serve San Luis, all the way out over there. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people and a lot of little kids in Forest Ranch. And we've got 2 elementary schools that are at thousands.
Absolutely is the booming development. All those families have moved in. The library that's over there is bustling. Yeah, I know, and it's only gonna grow even more as the Del Sur developments come back online. And there's a very large, I think, high school that you
We put in a K-8 school that just opened.
That's the case?
Yeah, and then there's a high school too, Del Norte is over. The one that you see right at the
Right
corner.
at the corner.
Yeah, that's a K-8.
That's K.
It's our first ever, probably our only ever K-8.
That's a massive K school. It's huge.
Yeah, it's pretty big. It'll hold 1,600 kids when it's fully built out.
K-8. Eighth grade. It's being constructed, so it's
In
finished.
Del Sur area?
It opened last week Wednesday for the first day. And about half their full population, about 800 kids. Coming online. Design 39 campus. It's a little unusual.
Okay, so yeah, any stragglers is.
I hope it's separate a little bit. You don't want kindergartners with 8th graders, do you?
No, but you do like 7th and 8th graders mentoring and coming down and helping kindergartners and first.
I went to an elementary school
Things like
that had
that.
kindergarten. and
Yeah. K-8 is not unusual. It's unusual around here, but it's
yeah.
not unusual in a lot of other
Yeah.
places.
Huh.
Private schools are typically K-8 as well.
Yeah.
They don't-
But yes, we don't have 8th graders right on a regular basis.
Well, great. I'm gonna start because I know some people may be floating in, but this is really more of a discussion rather than a presentation. One of the things I'm hoping to do in the next Congress is introduce legislation to really, I think, focus on one of the most profound reforms I think we can make in education, and that is transparency on teacher performance. When I talk to individuals about what is the best ingredient, the most important ingredient for a child's achievement, obviously parents, parental involvement, key, number 1. But then the second thing they say is making sure that you have a quality teacher, a teacher that can inspire and motivate and really reach a student. And it's not always going to be their homeroom teacher, I recognize that, but it's the essential ingredient. Having built a company, 2 companies really that focus on performance management, I spent a lot of time looking at how do you measure performance, how do you bring different stakeholders together to measure hard to measure outcomes, because we were specializing in nonprofits and government. Those are never financial outcomes. It's always, did you make an impact, you quantify the impact, it's typically immeasurable what you're trying to do. And so I get the whole challenge of how do you measure performance of students, of schools, of teachers. But the conversation itself in developing measures is profound. It can yield all sorts of discussion points and clarity of expectations. And so in the federal government, we have a program called the Teacher Incentive Fund. It provides funding to school districts to reward their best teachers. Now, the federal government typically has a ton of red tape and strings attached to every dollar they send. And so what I'm proposing is to actually increase funding for the program the same time, cut the red tape so that we have two requirements. You can have the money, provided you do two things. One, you have to evaluate your teachers at least once a year. And number two, you have to post the ratings for each individual teacher online for the public to review. Now,
School teachers love that.
I want school boards and teachers and parents to design the metrics. So, what Peter Drucker said, what gets measured gets done. I don't believe the federal government should be telling you what to measure. That's really a decision that local control should prevail on. But if we're already giving the money to school districts, we would want to make sure that the money is efficiently and effectively spent. So, hey, if you're rewarding teachers, evaluate them at least once a year and post everything online. There are some people who say, well, if you're giving the money, you must demand more than that. Well, I think that transparency of parents knowing the ratings are online will be the best disinfectant, would be able to cure a lot more problems than any red tape that the federal government imposes beyond these two that I'm talking about. And we've all seen how when children come home on their first day of school or during orientation, and they say, here are my teachers. Most parents immediately start asking questions about, what do we know about these ones? And they pick up the phone, they call friends and family members, and ask, hey, do you know about this teacher who's teaching Spanish or teaching math or teaching English? And there's that informal comparing of stories, but nothing really formalized. And so our teacher performance bill would try to jumpstart that reform, and I think it could be very profound. Second, we have, in particular, I would say San Diego Unified, where I have a lot more concern about the board. But from time to time, people say, well, the board doesn't listen, or there's a board issue we don't seem to be able to get attention for. I believe that as an elected official, I should be part of the conversation of what is going on in the schools, because the schools are such an important service. Schools and education, the quality of our education is so important in the economy. So if I talk about wanting a strong economy, strong middle class jobs, if I'm silent on education, that doesn't make sense. Most of the business leaders I talk to complain about the lack of skills that our students are equipped with when they leave high school, some when they leave even college. But the big complaint they have typically is engineering, science, technology, math, STEM disciplines, among other issues. And so if we don't equip our children with the skills they need to get 21st century jobs, we won't have a very strong economy. And so I want to be part of the conversation on what is happening in our schools so that we can make sure that we can address those issues. And then finally, there's a whole host of other education and school-related topics that the federal government has a substantial role in. I met this morning with ministers, and they talked about the school lunch program and how important that is, and how many children still go to bed hungry, and how we've got good nonprofits like Feeding America that give children the backpacks. I helped cut the ribbon on their new facility when I was on city council. But the ministers are hearing about the needs. Another one told me about the school, one school requirement where children are told they have to bring in a ream of paper. Every child has to bring a ream of paper, and assignments and whatnot are printed on the paper for them to take home. If you don't bring in your ream of paper, then the teacher will offer to email it to a parent's email address. We're asking people to bring in paper. And the idea that a child may not have a parent that has good email and whatnot. So these are issues that, some issues are related to existing federal programs. Other issues I think we can address if we engage local nonprofits like Feeding America for some of those programs, local businesses to donate supplies. And I want to do whatever I can to try to bring resources to the table where they're needed. And so we are going to be releasing a plan in a few weeks relating to my commitment on how we improve schools locally. Obviously, the teacher performance initiative that I talked about will be piece of legislation that I'll be championing. But I'd love to get your ideas and thoughts, particularly from school board members where you've dealt with both sides of it, and whatever I can do to help. I'm prepared to use every resource in my office to try to help vis-a-vis federal policy in these Congress. So comments, suggestions, questions, because I don't want to finalize a plan without getting at least some input in each community and inviting people to come and tell me their thoughts before we roll out something.
Let me ask, if I get clarification here, so the things you've talked about is basically doing this plan with the rating of teachers. But it sounds to be decentralizing. In other words, you're not putting a standard for the rating. You're letting the parents do it naturally by having
Parents,
the public
school
so they
boards,
say, we don't like this teacher because he's got a bad rating.
Parents, school boards, and then obviously you'd have, because this is an employment issue, you'd have labor unions that would be able to meet for standards. So there would be a process for each community.
Which, again, I would like that, because I hate anything coming from federal government that over controlling local schools. And the other thing, so the same with the food, you're talking about not having federal government continue more, you're talking about trying to get private sector to help.
No,
bring
both.
food in.
No, both. When I hear that we are challenged with resources to meet the needs of the communities, one of the reasons why I wanted to meet with the ministers is that they're like a radar system for us. They'll hear about a family that's in need, and if I can connect them to nonprofit or private funding or government programs, that's what I'd like to do. There's so many people who don't know how much is available for them, and again, I'm not suggesting that everyone just simply get handouts. What I'm suggesting
Right,
is
because
that
that's how
help
we
people.
encourage that, isn't it?
Well, we want to make sure that they have knowledge of resources that are available to get them back on their feet.
Once you get those who
But there should
don't
be
need
no
it, but
child
will use
in our
it just to
community.
get something.
There should be no child in our community that ever goes to bed hungry. No child. And fortunately, we do have nonprofits that are supported by the charitable donations of individuals that are willing to help out. It's not the child's fault.
Oh, I agree. But some people will not.
You can't please everyone all the time, right? You gotta just try to do your best.
There is a waste in the schools with the free lunches and the kids don't eat it, they just throw it away.
I've seen those reports. I think that's, I can't understand why that's a requirement. I'm sure somewhere there's an explanation, but when we hear about that, and all the people who could use that food, I get that, we have to make sure that everything is sanitary, but maybe what we do is we encourage, or go to food that is easily, donated, from programs. I don't know. We gotta figure out where that rule requirement, came from, what problem was the rule designed to try to solve, and figure out if there's a better way to
What
solve the
rule are
problem.
you talking about? The rule you can't.
There's, and this has been covered in the media, where any food that's not consumed that day by children, even if it's perfectly good, it's not been touched, would have to be destroyed that day. You can't donate it, give it, or hold
Well,
it.
anything
That's
that's on
not
their
so much
tray,
the problem.
it just goes.
Kids is part of the problem. Nobody, they don't like the food. And that's the biggest problem. So a lot of it doesn't get in the army interest.
And what has your experience been on that? Because you probably heard the same stories.
Yeah, I mean, there's always talk about kids that, I think your question maybe was more about kids that throw their food away, or you're talking more
Well,
about
they
food
don't
that's
want
just.
it, they just throw it away, they don't eat it, and it's on the tray, and it's just
Yeah,
perfectly
so a lot-
fine, and it just goes.
There are issues with that. I mean, part of it is the quality of the food. So, are kids getting things that they're actually gonna consume, so that's important. I think in our district, we do a pretty good job of managing the number of meals we deliver each day, so I don't know that I'm not aware of an enormous waste problem of unused food. I am aware of kids throwing food away. Once they get it, they eat one or two things and the rest is in the trash. But I may have a good answer to that, other than more sugar.
No,
Probably not a good
These
answer.
are actually food workers who work at some of the school districts who lament the fact that they are told that if there's any uneaten food, that they have to destroy it. Milk, perfectly good milk, thrown away, and so I heard those stories and I was like, wow, when I get back to Washington, I want to make sure I can look into whatever's happening here and see if there's a better way to.
It's a pretty highly regulated piece of.
It is, it is. In the state of California, the government unions have been able to shield support services from managed competition, competitive bidding. And at the city of San Diego, we implemented competitive bidding as a way to save money. And in many cases, the government workers won the bid, which is fine.
Capitalism at work.
It is. You know, you would never put a roof on your home. You would never hire, a gardener even initially, if you didn't go out and check around maybe 2 or 3 different bids and use the power of the market to try to get your best value. Not necessarily lowest bid, but best value. We are seeing these rules implemented, mandates that you can't do that as a school district. And then, of course, in the city, they fought it every step of the way, and ultimately we were able to get some good reforms. But that is something that I'd like us to continue to focus on as San Diegans, as Californians, of trying to support services at least to more competitive bidding. I'm a big fan of charter schools. San Diego has done a lot in that area, has been a leader. And the charter school movement is impressive to me because at first it gives parents more diversity of options. Second, they are breaking the mold and trying more innovative approaches to how they design curriculum and what type of specialized education they're giving students. We all know High Tech High, but you may not know about the city of San Diego's charter school that we've partnered with San Diego Unified on, that's located in the San Diego Downtown Library. 2 floors of the library, and the board of directors decided that their curriculum approach would be an urban-based education. And so they are focusing on things that are happening in a robust downtown, and so the topics and the educational approaches are based around that model. A lot of urban arts, programs, for example, that they're investing in. You can go through almost every single one of these charter schools, and there's something different about what they're trying to do with students. And not all students would, benefit, but there would be a charter school program out there for you to choose from. More competition and choice, obviously, is always a good thing. Allow parents the ability to select schools as much as possible with using that competition in the system.
I know when you're talking about High Tech High, in relation to what you're saying about kids coming out of high school with some skills or whatnot, and I feel like those that go to those charter schools or High Tech High or schools like that have a mentoring program or a partnership with a local business or something like that the kids can apprentice during their time while they're in high school seem to have a huge impact on those kids and their futures, versus those that don't have that opportunity.
Absolutely, and it's not just the private sector partnerships, but it should also be your local government partnerships.
Right.
In the 8 years prior to me being on city council, the council eliminated after-school programs. They cut library hours by 40% in some of our most needy neighborhoods. They decimated, the arts and culture and park and rec programs. And so when you take a look at this, they were not willing to take on the government unions to trim the salaries and benefits back down to sustainable levels. What they did was they went after programs for our kids. What we really pay our tax dollars for, but we want these programs. Those programs being taken out of the equation really put a pressure on our schools. And so it's like a domino effect that, you start seeing a major impact to the quality of childhood development when the city government isn't doing its part. And then the same could be true if you don't have an active business community that's willing to do apprenticeship programs, work study programs. So we've got the workforce partnership here in San Diego that receives federal dollars, a lot of federal funding. It's under the Workforce Investment Act. I've been pushing something called a Hire a Youth program, which would be a work study program at local employers that we could get them to help fund a portion of this, commit to certain standards of mentoring, and then of course we can leverage our nonprofit and government grants to fund the program. But it's all part of that concept of it doesn't just happen in the classroom. You've got to go far beyond that to create so many opportunities for children to learn, not in the classroom. We need to build a system that anticipates that.
I love that, project that, the kids, I've never been to it myself, but the BizTown. is that what
Yes.
it's called?
It's called Junior Achievement.
Junior
Junior Achievement, and JA is actually in the middle of a capital campaign that they haven't quite announced publicly yet, but they've gotten, I think, about $2 to $3 million in grants or funding. They want to get another $2 to $3 million on top of that, but they are fantastic, and a lot of it's online, computer-based simulations that they're now wanting to expand for older grades. They're also not even, maxing out on the number of fifth graders, because they focus the program just on fifth grade. They're not even serving the potential market in San Diego County, so we can totally expand that program. And I just hear so many kids come back
Oh, yeah.
raving about it. Plus the businesses are
Well,
happy
that's the
with it.
end that I hear from it, was the businesses that are participating.
Yeah. It's remarkable, and programs like that. Another great program in San Diego, I'm sure you've heard of Reality Changers. They're doing a lot of great work down in City Heights. They have an exceptional graduation rate and success, plus college scholarships that they've been able to obtain for students. Met with nonprofit leaders yesterday on their financial literacy programs and how they can educate parents and students on a variety of grants and loan programs for schools that are available for them. There are some college loan programs that start as early as 6 years old.
Wow.
6 years old.
Yeah.
So some remarkable stuff that and of course that program has like milestones and performance metrics for the kids and standards. So, but I never knew that, and most parents I talk to aren't aware of that. And my hope is that we can become an office that really gets out there with connecting dots amongst different groups that have resources available for schools and children.
Have you guys already talked about special ed things?
No.
Help me out on that, because I know obviously we have a big role
Well,
there.
special ed, here, my Mark, I'm on the school board
Yeah, I
here
know.
as well, and we've met before, and one of the areas that nobody wants to talk about in Washington DC is what we call the encroachment from special ed. So special education laws require us to provide for certain services, and the federal government says that they will pay for a certain portion of those services to reimburse us for those costs. And every year they never pay us for those services. So this last year, we are spending about $30 million out of our budget that is supposed to be paid by the federal government, which they don't. So they mandate these services, and we want to help our kids. It's not that we don't want to help our kids, but the point is they mandate a certain basket of services, say you have to provide it. We'll provide, I think, 40% of the funding. In reality, they provide 10% of the funding.
How do they get around the commitment?
They just don't pay it.
They just don't.
They just don't fund it.
If you read the law, it said they would do their best, right, something along those lines.
Gotcha.
That's what I like to do with taxes. I'll just
Yeah.
do
The
that.
best on the taxes, I like it.
And so it's a really big issue because it grows larger. The regulations associated with special ed grow larger and larger, and the frequency with which now a cottage industry has really sprung up for people to sue the district, for attorneys to sue the district, for advocates to come in and sue the district on behalf of special ed kids. And again, we love our kids. We want to take care of our kids. But the mandates that continue to roll down and the costs associated with this and the partnership we're supposed to have with Washington in covering those costs, it just isn't there. And like I said, $30 million of our budget, which is supposed to come from Washington to help pay for those costs, wasn't there this last year. And the year before it was 28 million, the year before it was 26, and it's growing significantly.
And the
Growing
response,
problem for us.
the response from the federal government is nothing, all
Well,
There have been-
Mr. DeMaio's back there, he can.
There have been
shout it out.
very weak efforts over the years to sponsor legislation to up their commitment, that they never really go anywhere. So,
How are we doing with special ed programs themselves?
I think in our district, we do well. People come here because we're known to have pretty strong programs. We manage them pretty well. We try to keep as many kids in-house as possible rather than referring them out to non-public schools, which are a lot more expensive. But special ed identification is a growing issue. More and more parents want their kids tested. More and more parents push to have something identified with their child that needs some sort of special service. And so our budget grows anywhere from $1.5 to $2 million a year just in special ed.
So if you think about that, the way that the federal level, Social Security and Medicare are eating up a larger and larger portion of the pie, that's kind of the way special ed is, that our funding is, at the local level, special ed is becoming a bigger and bigger piece of the pie. And again, if the federal government was reimbursing us for those different additional costs, it would be a big help. But since they're not, it's really squeezing the other portions of our budget. The non-special ed portions of the budget are getting lower allocations.
And California's already, one of the lowest states for pupil funding. So when you start taking dollars out that are designed for your general ed students to support your special needs students, it's sort of another thing. And then the other area that's affecting us is the lack of leadership on the authorizing ESEA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. As of today, with No Child Left Behind at its full level, every child in America is supposed to be proficient, and if you're not, then you're in program improvement. And program improvement demands that you spend certain dollars on things that you may or may not need. And so right now, Poway Unified is a program improvement district, and we have to spend a certain amount of money that we could be putting into programs for our kids on certain mandated administrative functions because of that. And it's just ridiculous, but we have no choice. And this bill was supposed to be reauthorized in 2008. For 6 years, they can't get their act together. So that's another area that we would love to see something happen.
Do you have specific modifications in that bill that you guys would like to see done, or is there, I'm sure you have obviously the associations that the district belongs to that can now also be effective spokespeople?
The most painful thing is this, what we call a hockey stick. The hockey stick, when the No Child Left Behind was originally authorized, they started and said like 14% of your students have to be proficient by this year, and the next year 18, and the next year 22 or whatever. And they really phased it in slowly. And we all want accountability, we all want better schools, et cetera. But as then you get out to the latter years, in years 12 it was like 75%, in year 13 it was like 87%, and now by year 14 you have to have 100% of your students proficient in all these various areas. We are always going to have some students who just moved here, who are immigrant kids, who haven't been in the system or whatever, who just aren't performing. So you're never going to hit that 100% metric. It's the right goal for us, that's our target for everything. But because of that hockey stick here at the end has caused, again, us to go into program improvement as a district. And we don't have a single school in our district that doesn't have an API of over 800, and we have like 23 over 900. These are wildly high-performing schools, and yet the overall district is being called a district that's in program improvement and having to spend dollars on certain things that are just not helpful to student achievement. And so, in my mind, the reauthorization should certainly include removing, either changing or removing that or providing. If you're a district that's doing all of these things well, then you should have some flexibility in addressing the fact that this hockey stick is, virtually unachievable.
Right.
I don't know, what do you think?
Well, and I think, you mentioned earlier with your background in performance management and so on, I think it's looking at the right measures. No Child Left Behind basically measures standardized testing that takes place on one day, and it penalizes you if enough of your kids don't take the test, even though parents have the right to opt their children out of the test. So you have places where, particularly with special ed populations, parents don't want their kids exposed, they take them out, and then that school fails its measure on what percent of the population took the test. So,
and children know that their standardized tests do not affect their grade, right? So your kids do this when they're in school.
It just doesn't.
It doesn't affect your grade, it doesn't count, so they're gonna do, they're gonna work hard. We try to do incentives to get kids to really wanna do it, but it works a lot better at the elementary than at the middle and the high school, where some of them are like ABC, ABC.
The gig is up. They basically know what's going on.
they do, they do. So I don't have a good answer for you. I just know that the current system really isn't working well, and it would be something that I think would be worth some smart people thinking about. So that would be.
So I'll have to find some smart people. I what I try to do is I just absorb good ideas, from others.
You know, and we should just tell you about our teacher relationship with
Yeah.
Poway. It's very special. We have an extraordinary relationship with our teacher. You mentioned this, teacher evaluations. We're currently, we have a joint task force going on right now with our district and our union people to develop an evaluation system
Good.
that will work for us.
What's the role of parents in that discussion right now?
So the first step is for the district and the teachers to agree on some metrics and then to bring it forward into a public conversation on what that looks like. What we've been pushing for, I think Mark and I certainly have been for quite some time, with the couple of points you mentioned. One is annual review. I managed people too for a long time. You don't evaluate someone every 5 years and expect to have an impact.
Unified does it.
Well, so most districts, districts do.
I know.
Most districts, and I have to admit, so does Poway.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed by that, So annual review is absolutely the right one. And parent and student voice.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, parents, and more so than parents, students know who the good teachers are. And they can explain why they're good teachers.
Yeah.
Not the teachers they like the most,
Right.
but the ones that
Ones
they
that
actually learn from.
get things done.
And that's lacking right now. And those are things that are part of the conversation right now. So our community will begin to see some of that rolled out in the springtime after our
Great.
teachers and staff have a chance to do that.
Can you break that down for me, that I don't quite understand how that would work? When you're talking about evaluation, as a parent who's had children through the district, and I've seen great, creative, smart teachers come through, and there's no position for them, they get canned at the end of the year.
Well, the pink
And
slip
then I
issue,
see
we saw it a couple years ago.
the teacher that's getting ready to retire, that could care less, and is just babysitting a bunch of kids, being able to stay there, and so I don't know where that balance and what you're talking about, how would that maybe equal that? I don't know.
But under the system, if you start seeing the bonus pays and the salary increases are given to the teachers with the lowest rankings, but they've been there the longest, that starts an amazing conversation. I mean, the school board would start getting a lot of heat from parents that, wait a minute, they're our best teachers, but they're not getting the salary increase and the bonus pays that the other teachers are based on this tenure or time served law. The complaints I hear from teachers all the time is that many of the school districts use tenure on assignments. So a fresh teacher is assigned to the least desirable school. Someone with more time served gets to go to an easier school where parental involvement is greater and it's kind of easy just to kind of coast through.
That's less of a problem in our district.
Well, of course, you guys, your demographics.
Yes. And teachers tend to really like their school, whether
Yeah.
it's an easy school or a hard school, they get a very strong sense of
Sure.
community, so there is that movement, but you're right, in a lot of districts, that's absolutely.
And then pink slips, we saw that several years ago with the budget challenges. Teachers would say, look, I've only been here for a year and I get my pink slip first. Or another teacher would bump them out of the preferred classroom instruction area. Someone who's really good at teaching geometry might get bumped and they're told, well, now you have to teach calculus. I'm like, I'm good at geometry, but I can do calculus, but I prefer
The
geometry.
state of California, this lawsuit just came through called the Vergara case.
Yeah.
And the state of California has it embedded in state law, tenure, the way that you fire people through dismissal, and also what they call last in, first out. Or,
Last hired, first
last in, first out. So last person hired is the first one that goes out. And that's embedded in state law.
Yeah.
And this case that just came through, this Vergara case, basically threw those things out for a lot of reasons. And again, in our district, it's not quite the same reasons as it is for San Diego Unified. San Diego Unified does have some really challenging, low-performing schools that always get really, really new teachers. And so if you have a layoff that comes through, you may have 3/4 of the teaching staff is gone. And so you lose some of your best and brightest, and you also lose this continuity on campus. And that's less of an issue for Poway Unified. But we do have, some of our longest teachers that may not be our best teachers, and a lot of our younger that are fired up and everything else. And we are still governed by those state laws and the way that our labor contracts are set up.
And that was a problem in declining budget years, where you had to make some layoffs and change things, and it was a problem. Hopefully going forward over the next few years, it won't be as big a problem. And we have a joint hiring program between
between our teachers and our district, we share responsibility and decision-making for who gets hired in our district.
When you say teachers, you mean the unions?
I mean, yeah, the teacher, yeah, the union.
The union, okay.
Well,
There's a
for us, they're, well, not so much in our
Yes,
district.
I know, but
Not so
some
much in our
districts
district,
are.
but the district leadership sits on a group 50-50 with district administration to make decisions about which teachers get offered jobs and which don't. And it's really about a commitment on both parts to quality, because if you get good people in the system, seniority and tenure are less of an issue. I mean, there's still problems, but they're not as big of a
And not only that, not only do we do that joint hiring process, but then we've also developed a 2-year mentoring program for all those new teachers. So you have teachers that know if they come to Poway, there's gonna be a high expectation for performance. It kind of reinforces itself. Then you do the hiring jointly to make sure you get the best and brightest. And then you put them through a 2-year mentoring program where we pull 4 or 5 of our best teachers who are mentoring them, and our district leaders and our teachers union are evaluating these first-year teachers and these second-year teachers in this regular joint committee we call our PPAP committee. And so at that time, any of those organizations can pull the plug on that teacher and say they're not measuring up. It's not driven by the union, it's not driven by us. And what that's done is about half, maybe more than half of our teachers have gone through that program in the last 16, 17, 18 years. So certainly we've seen with our younger teachers coming in, boy, you've attracted better teachers, you've trained them better, you've given them better support, so when they moved into a tenure position, we've had less problems, shall we say. We do have some of our older teachers that I'm sure we still have some older teachers, right? But I was pleased, my junior came home from Poway High School and went through the list of her teachers and just said, Dad, I haven't got a bad one in the bunch. And, you know, now, she didn't say that 2 years ago when she had health with a particular teacher, but, you know, I think our teacher quality is pretty good.
So, other issues and ideas, I mean, obviously ESEA, and Nickleby or No Child Left Behind.
Well, how about this, just something that's a concern, you know, with my industry. I'm the owner of a trade corporation in the trade.
Construction and whatnot?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And I'm the vice president of our trade association. And the biggest problem we have is we can't find people to hire.
Yeah.
Which forces our companies to go to the illegal aliens because we can't get manpower to work. And it is a real problem. Why can't there be some partnership? When we've tried a few places, we even tried at Poway with the practice. We haven't had any support from the school side. We gotta have people to build. I know computers are great and we want people to be good at computers, but somebody's gotta build buildings. But we can't get young people into it. And it's not, in my trade, it is really hard to the point that anybody you're hiring, 90% of them are illegal. That are coming to your door because nobody else comes. So how do we solve that? It's a concern for our industry.
That's really frustrating to hear it, but it's not the first time that I've heard that, because construction companies, AGC, ABC, their associations have apprenticeship programs. And
The unions.
well, the AGC has
I don't know what that is.
Associated General Contractors and Associated Builders and Contractors. So they've got apprenticeship programs, as well as the unions have apprenticeship programs. There are also specialized programs, like the Black Contractors Association has an apprenticeship program that they've partnered up with. Half of most AGC graduating classes are Latino. And they're trained and ready to work. But what we need to do is a better job of marketing those employment positions.
Is there funds out there that you can help train and encourage students that there is another option if they want to? It's a huge problem.
I agree.
For the industry.
We talked to ABC and AGC to see if they've got some ideas on how we deal with that. And there's individual trade unions like electrical contractors, NECA, I guess, as the employers. So the unions also, I would imagine, would have an interest in doing some discussions on how we can do better outreach here.
I mean, what do you think? 20 years ago, did you have a difficult time hiring people? And if so, what changed? So is it a
Because
function of
you're
wages
in
or?
schools, you're teaching everybody, it's demeaning to actually be a trade, you need to work in computers, you need to be a doctor, you need to be an attorney. And that's what I see.
Who's
And
teaching
so-
that? What do you mean?
Schools in general. And so those young men don't even wanna apply, they wanna sit around and complain because there's no work, but
I
yet
met
they
some
work out,
really
they
good
don't wanna come.
contractors that they've got a pretty good lifestyle, so.
Mostly.
I'm not saying that.
Because they start young and they work their way up.
Right, but it's still,
Yeah.
we can't get support from the practice, really, we try, and they don't help us much in there. And, consistently, and it's,
It's not clear Praxis would be the right place to go. We should talk about, maybe
Yeah.
there's a way to do that, but.
kids just don't wanna, they don't wanna do it, they wanna work on computer, they wanna play with their iPads, they wanna do that, which is fine, and I'm not saying they're not lucrative, because there's plenty of lucrative people in the trades, I'm just saying, somehow the image is, I don't wanna do that, I wanna work on computers, or I wanna.
Well, a lot of the construction now is using digital technology as well, so.
I agree.
It's not just the.
I know, I agree with that, I'm just saying that that's still the image.
Yeah.
So we really struggle, and my entire, and again, I'm on the vice president of association, and everybody struggles with that
Yeah.
fact, of trying to get.
I'm not
young
sure it's a
people-
function of what the schools are teaching. I think it's the trades you have to work. It's hard work. You gotta go out, I mean, your trade, people are working hard out in the sun,
It's hard
they're
work,
busting
but
their tail.
We need to
And
market
I-
the concept of you can start your own small business. It's
Sure.
one of the easiest, earliest entry points
Sure.
to establish your own business
It is.
or in trades.
Um,
But we need it,
But if there's some type of program that you can encourage, or lead these young men that they can't go that very young,
When you're
sex
talking
care.
like career fairs?
Yeah, something to lead them, that there is something out there.
AGC has a place at the junior achievement.
Well, you know, well, we should talk about this, because we do a college and career fair every year, maybe even more than one. We had 165 colleges come to our career fair last year, I think at Del Norte, where it was a career fair night. Maybe we need to do something where we have a trades fair night, right? Where once a year, we really do gather in all of the trades that can hire people right out of high school with apprenticeship programs and other things, and make that a more interesting option for the young person that's inclined that
And
way.
the reason he's bringing up Abraxas is because they, in putting together a career fair, they're reaching out to the local community and trying to get them
Yeah.
to sponsor that. And so
They've
that's
had,
how
they've had a little career fair, and we haven't had much success, but we've tried.
So for a larger aspect, we've never heard anybody asking for that kind of thing.
That's great.
I never thought of it.
And it's interesting to us from our perspective, because right now the big debate in San Diego is the minimum wage. We're gonna raise that minimum wage, and what, after 5 years, it's gonna be $14, $13 an hour. We start guys at that right now.
Right. Good.
And you can't get them, and
And we
you
can't get them,
workers.
but now we're whining because they can't make it $8, well, we're looking for people and nobody comes to us. It's incredible.
They gotta work.
I guess so.
That's amazing.
They don't always have the skills.
Not necessarily. I mean, we're getting people that don't have skills. We're it's a apprentice type program. So anyway, sorry.
That's helpful, though, and I'd like to see if we can get AGC, ABC to be part of that, because the role of their trade groups is to help do workforce development. And where else to start besides our high schools? Maybe even our local.
Well, a broader theme there is just exposure to career options.
Yeah.
Everybody, there isn't a school district in the planet that does well in that. Some do better than others, but most are very poor. And it needs to start probably in middle school, honestly, you know. What are the possibilities that are out there, and why are some good, and, what makes, this whole notion of owning your own business. There's kids that wanna do that, and they don't know how to get there. They're not all gonna invent the new computer or the new video game, somebody's gonna do something else.
Well, let me just bring up then ROTC, like in Westview. You know, it's a great little segue for those that are already thinking military, and they get that in their high school.
Recruitment.
They have a
I take
phenomenal
my
ROTC
Abraxas
program.
student and I take them all the way to Westview just
That's
to
great.
participate in that. But I see the impact they have as a whole as they've gotten bigger and bigger over the years. You know, those kids walking around in uniform and they're respecting the uniform and other people respecting them, and it just seems to bring with it a whole different.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, the issues obviously are out there. I think that the solutions are also out there. Challenge is getting people willing to roll their sleeves and say, okay, let's do a
and take
trade.
it out of the federal government and put it back to the local.
Yeah, the white knight's not gonna come in and save us all. We've got to kind of take the reins and be willing to step forward and get more involvement by the nonprofits, the private sector, and more importantly than anything else, parents.
And
Get that challenge.
I would say on that note, in regards to special ed, and I don't mean to demean anybody's, situation, because it's certainly different for everyone, but, I see a lot of that in parents looking to PUSD as, a better school district, so they're just going, you guys take my kid and if something, and fix it, and if something doesn't quite work out, rather than, and I'm saying it from my own personal experience, because I had a child that didn't do well in PUSD, and so I took that initiative to work with them, homeschool, and find a different program that did work for them. But I think other parents, maybe because they're working families, they're just not as involved for whatever reason, and so they take them over to the special, now let's test it, because there must be something wrong.
I had multiple case management, cases referred to my office when I was on city council, people in both US, Senator Unified as well as Poway, on the special ed issue, complaining about delay time in testing, placement, and we'd always say, we'll see what we can do, this is not our issue, but we'll go to bat for you, we'll try to find the right person in the district.
It's a tough issue.
It is amazingly tough, and, I think it does start with making sure that we get federal clarity, and see what we can do on the funding side as well. Well, I appreciate you coming tonight, and.
I have one more thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the big question, obviously, the hot topic today, Common Core. Tell me, what about Common Core?
My view is that the local school boards and parents, active parents involved, get a much better job of developing, selecting curriculum. My concern about the Common Core process is that it was not very transparent. And then when all the school districts switched to it, suddenly it's like, wait a minute, where did this come from? And this is pretty serious stuff. This is about how do our children learn? What are we teaching them? How are we teaching them? That's substantial. And for that to come from on high, rather than have that be a conversation in each district that occurs, it troubles me. So my hope is that we have aggressive oversight of the process and look for any ways to improve.
But it's the genie out of the bottle, we'll never get rid of it?
I don't believe that at all.
Anything
No,
with that?
I think what we should be talking about is what are the standards of achievement that we want our children to learn, and have the answers come not from the federal government, have the answers come from parents, teachers, school boards at the local level.
How do you change that?
If
Because
Common Core
it's
starts,
already-
if Common Core starts the question, because now everyone's really focused on it, it may start a great conversation that yields great results in terms of, we think we can do something better, and here's the better that we have. And that's why I wanna see if we can, challenge districts, come up with a better approach that has the support of your parents, and obviously the input of the teachers.
It's gotta come from Congress,
And
and
it's-
if local's not gonna do it, it's gotta come from Congress.
Oh, I don't.
It ain't going to what?
No, I think the better ideas are gonna come from the local boards, absolutely.
But it's gotta be changed in Congress, you know, the best of all.
Well, here's.
I agree that
It's
we have to
actually
change
not
the
a federal
Congress.
mandate.
It's not?
No, the state of each state
It's a
adopted.
state, right.
Each state adopted whether they wanted to go into Common Core.
But
So
it's a federal system.
the federal government offered bribes and inducements.
They did.
Right.
Okay, but the actual creation of the standards was a bunch of governors that started that process, including Jeb Bush, Mike Huckabee, and said, if you have a kid that moves from New Mexico to California, don't we want to have some set of common standards at 8th grade at geometry and 9th grade algebra and all these things, so that there's continuity, so that we measure our kids, we'll know whether or not they're achieving state by state. And what happened, if the state of California at the legislative level had just said, we're not gonna adopt the Common Core, we're gonna keep the same standards we adopted back in '99, then Poway Unified would say, we still have to teach to those standards. We select our own curriculum, our own instructional materials, hire our own teachers, do our own professional development, and set that as a baseline, and we achieve and excel and exceed that over and over. Now we adopted Common Core, so that's the new state
At the
standard.
state level.
But at the state level, but Poway still can select their own curriculum, their own instructional materials, their
And
own
the rest are
teaching.
being pulled from federally funded.
Well, as long as you meet
funds.
the standard.
No, we're
No,
not.
as long as you adopt the standards.
Yeah, the state adopted the standards. So for us, I mean, we don't really have a say to say, okay, well, Poway, we're gonna select a whole different set of standards. California said, this is state law, these are what the standards are going to be. And
And
for
some of the
us,
strings attached that we talked about earlier, and that we need to kind of think about, no, we wanna go to more local decision-making, local control on these issues.
When our funds are strings, you gotta be able, we want you to do.
The key thing to remember is we do control what happens in our classrooms, how our teachers teach, the curriculum materials they teach, the lesson plans, to some degree, the sequencing, we control that, we as a district control that. And today, we have a committee that's made up of classroom teachers and district staff that are figuring out at every grade level what the appropriate way to instruct, not just Common Core subjects of English, language, and math, but all the subjects that we teach, history, science, art, all the kind of.
But we're hearing from the Praxis, again, having Nancy with the Praxis, from the teachers, that their hands are tied and they're changing a lot of what they do because of Common Core. Maybe is the teachers blaming it on that, but they're saying it's major changes in what they do because
well,
of Common Core.
in regards to the sequencing of things, it is major things. I mean, when I was 7th grade, I took pre-algebra, and 8th grade, I took algebra, and 9th grade, I took geometry, and 10th grade, and we've had this kind of, here's what you do at each grade level methodology for years. Well, now the state standards that our state has adopted has said, we're gonna teach some of those things in a different order, in a different sequence. We're gonna teach math in more of an integrated way rather than a box by box by box. Well, what that's requiring is that we have teachers now that are gonna be teaching those subjects rather than the class they've taught for 20 years, going through the same things. It absolutely is changing the sequence of what's gonna be taught. But we control, again, the instructional materials, the instructional time. An excellent teacher is still gonna be an excellent teacher. And if the state of California tomorrow says, we're at a Common Core, we're going back to the 1999 standards, then PUSD is gonna continue to push forward and try to do better and better every year. Because our comparative advantage is what happens in the classroom, the way we collaborate, the way that our teachers engage with our kids, the community support we have, et cetera. So Common Core, our district believes that those standards are better aligned, that they're more rigorous, that they're more relevant to what our kids are gonna be doing in the next 20 or 30 years. And if the state votes to move in a different direction, then we'll just keep running forward.
Sorry, Carl, this is your.
It's all, this is your meeting. So we'll be rolling out the education plan in a few weeks, and then in my office, we will have a point person exclusively on education issues, working with our local colleges and our local school districts. We'll be having quarterly, in each neighborhood, quarterly events to reach out to parents, teachers, and students, as well as a recognition program for academic achievement in schools that might be part of the congressional program that we're going to run. By doing that, my hope is that I'm kind of always on top of the discussions and the challenges that people are having with their local schools. And if we can play matchmaker to get resources into the schools, that's probably the best impact we can have immediately. And then, of course, we want to fight for thoughtful policies and legislation to make sure that we have the sort of support from the federal government that we need to teach our kids. Thanks so much.